Hi y'all, so my topic for the video project is derivatives and tangent line. And just as a refresher, the tangent line is the instantaneous rate of change, while the derivative is the slope of the tangent line. So let's get started. The first problem we have here is basically dealing with the tangent line. And it says if f of negative 1 equals 3 and f prime of negative 1 equals 2, find an equation of the tangent line when x equals negative 1. So from here, you know that your x is equal to negative 1 and your y is equal to 3. So your points are negative 1, 3. You also know that since f prime of negative 1 equals 2, your slope is 2. So slope equals 2. With these, you can use the equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And you just plug in the numbers. So y minus 3 equals 2 times x plus 1, because negative times a negative equals a positive. So this right here is your answer. In this problem, it says find the equation of the tangent line when x equals 1 with the function y equals the square root of 4x plus 2. So first what you want to do is rewrite it to y equals parenthesis 4x plus 2 to the 1/2, because that's just a different form of a square root. Now in order to derive this, you would want to use u substitution. So u would equal 4x plus 2 and u prime would just equal 4. So from here, you would do y equals u 1/2 times u prime. And then right here, you can also just go ahead and derive u to where it become 1/2 u to the negative 1/2 times u prime. From here, we can just plug in the numbers already, and then it'll just be y prime equals 1/2 parenthesis 4x plus 2 to the negative 1/2 times 4. So with this, we plug in x equals 1 in order to find our slope. So y prime of negative 1 would equal 1/2 4 times 1 plus 2 to the negative 1/2 times 4. So from here, we can say 4 times 1 is 4 plus 2 equals 6 to the negative 1/2 times 4. After that, we can multiply 1/2 times 4, and that'll become 2 times 6 to the negative 1/2. Now, since we can't, well, scratch that. We can just basically turn this into y prime negative 1 equals 2 over the square root of 6, because that's the negative 1/2. And we can just basically convert it to the root and then have it in the denominator. But if you want, since we can't have the square root on the bottom, we would have to multiply by root 6 on top and bottom, which would equal 2 root 6 divided by 6, which ultimately would equal root 6 over 3. Now this right here is your slope. But we're not done yet, because we want the equation of the tangent line. So we go back to the equation y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now we don't know our y1, so what you want to do is just plug in this one right here to y equals 4x plus 2, the square root of that. So we would have y equals the square root of 4 times 1 plus 2, which is equal to 4 root 6. So since that's your y, we plug in, we have all our numbers. So y minus root 6 is equal to root 6 over 3 times x minus 1 from that right there. And this is your answer. The last example is basically asking you the y-intercept of the tangent to y equals x times sine x at x equals pi is, so you're basically trying to find the y-intercept. So what you want to do here is you want to find the derivative of y equals x times sine x. And in order to do that, you use product rule. And what product rule is y prime is equal to f prime times g plus g prime times f. So x is f and sine x is g prime, or it's just g. So y prime is equal to the derivative of x is just equal to 1 times sine x plus derivative of sine x is cosine x times x, which is f. So from here, we can just condense it to y prime is sine x plus x cosine x. After you do that, you want to know what the intercept is, so we plug in pi and all the x's. After you do that, sine pi is just equal to 0 plus pi cosine pi is just 1. So y prime is pi. This is your slope. After you find, well, actually it's negative pi. Y prime of is equal to negative pi. So after you find your slope, you use the equation once again, y minus y prime is equal to m times x minus x1. So from here, we know that pi is equal to x, and your y value would just be 0 because you're trying to find the intercept. So you would plug in y minus 0 equals negative pi times 0 minus pi. You would simplify it, which would then equal to, well, scratch that, that's not 0, that's x. So it would be negative pi x plus pi squared. From here, you would just plug in 0 because you want to try to find the y-intercept. So y is equal to negative pi times 0 plus pi squared. This cancels out, and you're just left with pi squared. And this is your y-intercept.